Greetings and salutations. It's a new year, so therefore we have a new turntable to talk about. This is a video about audio, and we're going to talk about the Pro-Ject Debut Carbon EVO turntable, which was the latest in the Carbon line released last year. I found out about this turntable because my Audio-Technica turntable, which was an LP W40WN, had one of the hinges get broken on the lid. I think the kitty jumped off on top of it just the right way. So I went looking for a replacement hinge and ended up buying a whole new turntable. I actually bought the hinge for that turntable too because I like it a lot. And I have a video up about that. That has proven to be a really nice turntable. I have wanted to get my hands on a debut Carbon from Pro-Ject for years and years and years, and there's always been some little something that kept me away from it. One of the first things that I didn't like about it was the fact that you had to take the damn platter off to change the belt, to change the speed. You could get an outboard speed controller called a speed box, but that was for like an extra $150 or something like that. And so that kind of put me off a little bit. Well, they have decided that they're going to go ahead and build the speed box right into the turntable now. So underneath the left-hand corner here, I don't know if you can see that, probably not. There is a little toggle switch, and if you switch it to the right, you get 45, and to the left, you get 33, and if you leave it in the middle, the turntable is turned off. Hallelujah, thank you very much. Now, they had done that on other turntables, but they have brought that to the Carbon. What makes the Carbon awesome is this tone arm. It is a one-piece carbon fiber tone arm, very low mass, very rigid, and very well constructed. It has wonderful bearings in it. There is absolutely no play in the bearings at all. And we have a fishing line and weight anti-skate system, which seems to work very, very well, although I did have one little problem with that, and I'll tell you about that coming up. They have decided now that they will no longer ship in the United States with the Ortofon 2M Red, which makes me happy. At one point in time, I was a big fan of the 2M Red, and then I started noticing a lot of distortion. Moved up to the 2M Blue, and still heard the distortion, and figured out that it was in the cartridge. So I have been listening to Audio-Technica cartridges for quite some time now. My Audio-Technica LP W40WN came with a VM95E, which is the latest version of that. I didn't particularly like that one, so I upgraded that cartridge to an Audio-Technica AT-VM530EN, which is just right around $200. About $179 is what I paid for it. And so if you calculate the fact that I paid $300 for the turntable and then had to go out and buy a $200 cartridge, I got myself up to $500 into that turntable really quick. One of the nice things about the Carbon here is that it comes with this Sunoco, that's what I'm thinking, it's a gas station in the United States. No, this is a Sunoco cartridge, and it's not as nearly as distorted sounding as the 2M Red. This is a surprisingly good sounding cartridge. I was a little shocked. It sells for about $149. And I kind of thought that I would be swapping cartridges when I bought this machine, and I didn't. I am very pleasantly surprised with the sound. It's still breaking in, so the jury is still out. I had heard people say that it was a warm cartridge, and when I hear that, it always makes me think, oh, it's going to be rather dull. It's not going to have a lot of high end. No, this has plenty of high end. It's nice and crisp. It's got good bass too, and I like it. Still breaking in. I think it's a really good choice for this particular turntable. It goes well with the arm, and they just really hit one out of the ballpark with this one. This is a home run for sure. They said that they were looking for the best cost to sound quality that they could get for this turntable, and at about $150, the Rainier is not bad at all. Better than most of the really cheaper ones. Not quite as good, I would say, as like a 530 EN, the one that I have, maybe. But then again, like I said, it's breaking in and the jury's still out. I like the sound. I could listen to it all day. Let's put it that way. Another thing that they have done with this turntable is they now have leveling feet on the bottom of it. I don't know how well you can see that. And they have PTE, like a sorbothane vibration absorbing rubber type material, synthetic rubber. They have 3 of them, and you can really balance this turntable over a very wide range, which makes me very happy because I live in an old house and the floors are very much not level. There's not a true or plumb line in this house. So that's nice. The Carbon series comes with the steel platter, and they have decided for this one that they're using some of that PTE around the edge to dampen the platter so it doesn't ring quite so much. The former Carbon platters, they do have a tendency to ring like a bell. This one does not. They have new motor mounts in this turntable. So like several years ago, there was a problem where some of the Carbons had some motor noise that was getting into the sound. The vibration was getting into the turntable. They have redesigned that completely now with a steel plate, and the motor is suspended with more of that lovely PTE material, and there's no motor noise to be heard. It's none there that I could detect, let's put it that way. So one more thing to show you. Pro-Ject was kind enough to send a very nice interconnect cable for this turntable, and from what I read, they even worked out the best length for the best sound quality. And it is a beefy cable, one that you would probably spend quite a bit of money for if you were upgrading from just a standard RCA cable with a ground lead. So that's very nice. There are gold-plated connectors that is plugging into, and a great big ground post. So that's awesome too. This is a fully manual turntable. There's no auto return. You have to actually use the Q lever and move the arm over yourself. It also does not have a built-in preamp, which I consider to be somewhat of a positive, simply because of the fact that if you look at a turntable and you see that it has USB output, built-in preamp, and all these other little features in it, what you have to think is that having to add those to the design has taken away from the build quality of the basic turntable itself, because everything has to be accounted for in the price, right? So if I spend $500 on a turntable, I would like that money to go into materials and build quality. I can buy an outboard preamp. I don't need an outboard preamp. I have a receiver that has a really good preamp in it. Now, that is one way to look at it, and the other way to look at it is this. I have friends, and actually I tend to think this way myself, that you really should be able to get a decent turntable for $300. And yeah, that's true, I agree. But here's the deal. Every turntable that I've ever bought for $300, the first thing I have gone and done is bought a new cartridge to upgrade it. So for instance, when I bought my Audio-Technica LPW40WN, I ended up upgrading the cartridge. I didn't like the stock AT VM95E cartridge. I don't think that VM95 series, that new one, is all that good. So I bought an Audio-Technica AT530 VM530EN, which I paid about $179 for. So guess what? I just dumped damn near $500 into that turntable, now didn't I? So if you can spend $500 and get one that sounds good right out of the box, that's awesome. And they've really done a great job here. This is just an awesome, awesome turntable. I'm still playing with it. I have had one problem with it, and I will tell you what it is. I'm kind of ashamed, but I will tell you. And that is, see this anti-skate weight that's on that little bit of fishing line back there? I ended up somehow knocking the tone arm just the right way, and the tone arm went off to the right side of the turntable, and it jerked over so fast that somehow or another the string got pulled all the way through that weight. And I sat there for about a half hour trying to figure out how to get that little string back in. I ended up stuffing the little nubbin on the end of it into the hole, but it's still not right, and it's not going to hold. So I had to go buy me a new anti-skate weight, which will be here in a few days. This one should suffice until then. That was my fault, freak accident. It had nothing to do with the quality of the turntable itself. And it is important that you run your anti-skate weight, okay? Make sure you do that. Now, Pro-Ject makes it real easy to get into this turntable because it comes with this lovely illustrated guide on how to set it up. So, I mean, this is really all you have to do. Get it level first, and then follow the directions. The turntable will do 78 RPM if you should so desire, and if you have a cartridge that you want to put on it that you can play 78s with, do not play 78s with a standard LP stylus. They'll sound like crap and it'll rip the stylus up. But you can take the platter off, and you can put a special belt that comes with it on a different pulley, and it'll play 78s, which is kind of a weird feature that they threw in there. I will never use that feature. I'm not here for 78s. I play 45s and LPs. See if there's anything else to tell you about the turntable. It's really well made. It feels good. It loves to play records. It sounds good. Like I said, I was originally thinking I'll probably have to swap my cartridges out and everything. But I did want to hear what the Rainier sounded like. I'd heard good things about it, and it turns out to be a really good cartridge. So my plan for now is to go ahead and leave my ATVM 530EN on the Audio-Technica turntable, and at some point I want to have them both connected at the same time. And I don't know, I might do that, or just keep that turntable as a backup. Either way, I got turntables to play with, and I'm a very, very happy boy. As is tradition on these kind of videos, I'm going to play you some audio from the turntable itself. It will not be music. It will be spoken word. And this time around, we are going to be hearing something from this album. Some of you may remember this. This sold in the millions. This is a tribute to President Kennedy, which was put out by WMCA Radio in New York City back in 1964. So we're going to play a little bit of that. Before we get to that, I did want to say that if you are going to buy a turntable and you're going to dump money into it, there are two pieces of gear that I think that you absolutely should have. The first is one of these guys. This is a stylus force gauge. It's actually a little tiny jeweler's scale, but it's designed especially for reading stylus force on records. Now, you can balance the tone arm, and you can do that with it and all that stuff, but if you really want to get it accurate, this is the way to do it. Now, these require a little bit of playing around with until you kind of figure out how they work, because it really, like I said, might have to take the mat off the turntable, or you're just going to have to play with it a little bit until you get it to where it feels right with 2 grams, or whatever your stylus tracking force is going to be, whatever you're trying to get, okay? So let's say you're going after 2 grams. Don't just go with one reading in one place. Move this around, move the tone arm around, take the mat off the turntable, then do it and come up with a nice average right around 2 grams, if that's what you're going to do. It takes a little while to figure out how to use these things. But this will give you a whole hell of a lot more control over the tracking force than just playing around with the weights and balancing the tone arm and setting it to 0 and all that crap. That'll get you in the ballpark, and for most cases it works just fine. But if you're going to be spending money on cartridges, really, this is what you ought to do, is get one of those. This is a carbon fiber brush. These were sold by AudioQuest. There's some other companies that sell them as well. Mine is so old that all of the label has worn off. I've had it forever. They're very simple. You just put it down on the record like that. This is all it does. And what this does is it takes the static off the record by putting the static charge into your hand, and it gets all of the dust off the record as well. And you really ought to do this before you play your records to make sure that you're not tracking your needle through dust and you keep them clean. If you buy records new and they're clean and you do that and you handle them properly, you really shouldn't need to clean them very much at all. So anyway, let's listen to a little bit of this record, which is a tribute to John Kennedy, to wrap up this video.
As he assumed office in 1961, John F. Kennedy made it clear that he hoped to arouse the kind of enthusiasm for fresh and dynamic national innovations which had characterized the famous first 100 days of Franklin D. Roosevelt's New Deal. An able, young, and imaginative administrative team arrived in Washington with their able, young, and imaginative president. all came with a great variety of new ideas. But from the very beginning, the domestic concerns of the nation were thrust in the background, as the new administration was forced to meet an almost endless succession of fresh emergencies abroad. Shortly after President Kennedy took office, he had to make a decision about an invasion of communist Cuba by anti-Castro exiles. The invasion had been under preparation since before he became president.
Well, you get the idea. They're leading up to the famous speech that Kennedy made about Cuba. And you can go look that up on YouTube because it's already up there if you want to hear the rest of that. In closing, good turntable, $500, out of the box, ready to go. Got to have a good preamp to make it work. Follow the directions, make sure it's level. You should be absolutely perfectly all right. Very well made, well packed, good instructions come with it. I have heard from some folks in humid climates that sometimes these outside laminations on the Pro-Ject turntables can peel. I live in a mildly humid climate. We're going to see what happens with that. I personally have never seen that myself, nor do I know anybody who owns a Pro-Ject who had that problem, but it is something that I have heard of. And the nice thing about this turntable, you can actually get parts for it if something breaks, like my little anti-skate weight issue there. And they've been in business for quite some time. I actually ended up having to email Audio-Technica to find out if a hinge was available for my turntable, the ATW40WN. I found out that that turntable has been discontinued. They have an upgrade, the AT50 PB, which the PB stands for piano black and WN stands for walnut. Anyway, I don't know whether parts are going to be available for that turntable in the future. AT doesn't seem to be very committed to that particular line, and that's one thing I'm not going to have to worry about with Pro-Jects. There are a million of them in the world, and a lot of people have belts that need to be replaced and anti-skate weights where the string breaks and stuff like that. So pretty much any good hi-fi dealer is going to actually stock the parts. So that's it. Thank you for watching. I look forward to your comments and suggestions. We'll do it again soon.